Chapter 1. William Bolts and the East India Company. On August 1st, 1771, Richard Arkwright, an inventor who hailed from Preston, Lancashire, rented, along with 4 business partners, a piece of land in the Derbyshire village of Cromford. On a lease that the partners signed, they recorded their intention to erect and build one or more mill or mills for spinning, winding, or throwing silk, worsted, linen, cotton, and other materials. Originally a wig maker, Arkwright had, 2 years earlier, patented a spinning frame, a hefty contraption that used wooden and metal rollers to stretch and twist cotton threads into yarn. There is still controversy over whether Arkwright invented his frame or stole the design from others. In any case, after experimenting with horses to power his new machine, he decided that a water wheel would be more effective. Running through the land he leased at Cromford, there was a river, Bonsall Brook, as well as an underground channel, or so, that drained water from some nearby lead mines. Arkwright and his partners built a 5-story mill and a large water wheel. In a local newspaper, they posted a job listing for skilled artisans, clockmakers, wood-turners, a blacksmith, and unskilled workers. When Cromford Mill started production in 1772, it employed about 200 people. Many of them were women and children who were willing to work for lower wages than adult men. Cromford Mill wasn't the world's first mechanized textile factory. The nearby Lom's silk mill was also water-powered. It had been operating since 1721. Nonetheless, Arkwright and his partners were true pioneers of the factory system. Their mill set new standards for technology, productivity, and employee discipline. It operated around the clock with 2 12-hour shifts, and its workers were required to keep strict time. If they were late or left their posts early, their pay was docked. As the business expanded, the mill owners constructed small housing units nearby so their employees could walk to work. In 1776, they built a second mill on the same site. Today, Cromford is part of a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It is commonly associated with the start of the Industrial Revolution, a term popularized by the English historian Arnold Toynbee in the late 19th century. During the decades after the mill opened, other British entrepreneurs would copy it, building dozens of spinning mills, particularly in the Lancashire city of Manchester and its surrounding towns. The factory system, based on mechanization, non-animate power, and wage labor hired by capitalists, would gradually spread to other British industries, including woolen textiles, and to other countries, including the newly independent United States. Pointing to the vertiginous rise in output, productivity, and trade that this system unleashed, the historian Eric Hobsbawm described its emergence as probably the most important event in world history, at any rate since the invention of agriculture in cities. Hobsbawm issued this judgment in 1962. Subsequent historical research has qualified it somewhat. Cotton-led industrialization didn't transform the rest of the British economy as rapidly as was once thought. Between 1780 and 1820, overall GDP growth remained relatively slow, less than 1.5% a year. If we take a longer-term view, however, Hobsbawm's basic point surely stands. As the chart of world GDP over the past 2 millennia on the next page shows, it looks like a hockey stick. For nearly 1,800 years, GDP was flat. In the early 1800s, it took off, slowly at first, then more steeply, eventually almost vertically. As output and productivity rose year by year, planet Earth was able to support many more people. The world's population rose from about 790 million in 1750 to roughly 8 billion in 2023. Without sustained economic growth, this more than tenfold increase simply wouldn't have been possible. The activities of Arkwright and his associates went largely unheralded by metropolitan writers and journalists. Derbyshire and Lancashire were remote from London, and few of the city's inhabitants took notice of what was happening there. Capitalism was already thriving in Britain, but it was mercantile capitalism rather than industrial capitalism. Britain had firmly established property rights, extensive trading links, and a stock market in London's financial district, which is known as the City. The British capital, with a population of about 750,000, had surpassed Paris as Europe's biggest metropolis. The mercantile system revolved around the British Empire, which was largely a commercial enterprise, and its crown jewel was the lucrative trade with India. Many members of Britain's ruling class were involved, directly or indirectly, with the Indian trade, and they monitored it closely. Indeed, as Arkwright was busy getting Cromford Mill up and running, the metropolitan elites were consumed with a scandal involving the East India Company, a royally chartered trading monopoly that controlled key parts of the subcontinent. The company was criticized in Parliament and became the subject of a tell-all book by a longtime employee named William Bolts, who claimed it was impoverishing Indian producers by forcing the Indians to accept ultra-low prices for their products. The British presence, far from benefiting Indians, as defenders of the company claimed, had been rendered hateful to the natives by oppressions, has occasioned desertions of many of the people, and is in general odious in India, Bolts wrote. Bolts was an unlikely corporate whistleblower. Little is known about his early life except for that he was born in 1735 in Amsterdam, moved to England when he was 14, and spent some time working in Lisbon. By early adulthood, then, he had lived in 3 countries that established great trading empires: Holland, Britain, and Portugal. In 1759, Bolts obtained a job as a factor or junior manager at the East India Company, and he moved to Bengal, a vast state in northeastern India that encompassed much of modern-day West Bengal, Bangladesh, Jharkhand, and Odisha. As a major producer of cotton fabrics and many agricultural products, Bengal was the company's source of business and profits. The East India Company was founded on December 31, 1600, under a charter issued by Queen Elizabeth I that granted it a monopoly on all British trade east of the Cape of Good Hope. Initially, it was an informal alliance of merchant adventurers who pooled their money to finance individual trading voyages. Nothing much distinguished it from other British trading ventures established in the same era, including the Muscovy Company, the Levant Company, and 2 enterprises that helped to establish Britain's American colonies, the Virginia Company and the Plymouth Company. For a long time, the British East India Company was dwarfed by its Dutch rival, the United East India Company, known as the VOC, which was established in 1602. The Dutch company was another state-chartered enterprise, and it was also the world's first publicly traded joint stock corporation. Rather than being owned by a single proprietor or a group of partners, it issued shares that traded on the newly created Amsterdam Stock Exchange. Issuing stock was a revolutionary invention because it allowed investors to diversify their risks. Rather than staking their money on a single trading voyage that might end in disaster, a wealthy individual could buy stock in the VOC and spread the bet across all its operations.